All right, everybody, big slate around the NBA tonight. We got DraftKings contributors Garion, Thorne, and Mr. Nick Friar here to discuss it. This is NBA building blocks, so who your favorite DFS plays are at the following positions. 13-game NBA slate.
Yeah, we just came off a hockey segment. There were only 3 games on that slate.
And you know what's crazy? Is yesterday there were 10 NHL games and only 3 NBA games. It's
and
like
then you add them, and now we're 13.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy, dude.
Witchcraft. All right, favorite play at
That's
center.
ridiculous.
Gary, and who you going with?
You guys got to stop talking about that stuff. Big schedule is going to come shut down this show.
Ooh.
Yeah, scary stuff. Jared Allen. So we just move past that. Jared Allen, I think, is in a fantastic spot tonight. He's $7,500. I'm shocked he's this inexpensive. I know it's a big slate. I know someone has to be priced in the mid-tier. But Jared Allen, since the beginning of November, is averaging 37 minutes per game, 20.5 points, 16.3 rebounds. He's gone over 49 DraftKings points in 3 of the 4 games he's played in the month. Obviously, Cleveland has no Kevin Love. They have no Lauri Markkanen. They've also got no Colin Sexton. I don't really think Jared Allen's going to see all that much of a bleed over of Colin Sexton's usage rate or anything like that. But if Jared Allen's playing 37 minutes a night, we know just historically with the 5-year sample we have of Jared Allen, he's someone who can average well over 1 DraftKings point per minute. So with that type of volume, I almost think he's unavoidable on this slate, especially considering Washington is giving up the 2nd most DraftKings points per game to opposing centers. So perfect matchup, heavy volume, everything you could ask for in Jared Allen.
Yeah, Jared Allen, he's going to cost you $7,500. Who you going with, Nick?
It's funny, Gary and I are of a similar mind in this one. I like Evan Mobley tonight. I still think Jared Allen is a great play, too, at 7.5K. The only reason I want to go with Mobley is because he's a little bit cheaper at straight up 7K against the Wizards. Of course, Gary talked about Markkanen, Kevin Love, Colin Sexton, all out now. So plenty of offense to go around. And then when you look at the pace of this game, too, you got 2 teams that are in the bottom 18 in terms of pacing. And I know that was the same case with the Cavs-Knicks game, too, and that obviously played really well for both Allen and Mobley, and they had a similar output in that game. Right now, I don't know who's necessarily going to give you more points, but I would think that still you're going to get a little bit better from Mobley in terms of value just because, he's just a little bit cheaper.
All right, dudes. Favorite play at forward. Nick, lead us off.
So I know he's been doing really well, really consistent all season, but I still cannot believe that I like Harrison Barnes tonight going up against the Spurs. He's been about as consistent as anybody in this price range. I know 2 games ago he had his lowest scoring game of the season in terms of just straight up points, but it still wasn't his worst fantasy performance of the season. It was pretty much right around his average. And when you look at this game too, where for the centers, I like it more for the slower tempo with the Cavs game. This game should be up tempo with the Spurs tied for 3rd in pace, and then the Kings tied for 7th. Straight up 7th in pace. And then you look at when Barnes just dropped 26 on the other night. That's the other team that's 3rd in pace. That's the Hornets. I know they're much worse offensively than the Spurs, but still, there's going to be a lot of offense, a lot of movement tonight, and that's going to play well for Barnes.
All right, Care Bear, how about you, dude?
Yeah, I think we're going to probably talk about this game a lot, but, there's no one really active of note for the Nuggets. I mean, that's probably unfair to some of their, tertiary players, but you've got no Nikola Jokic in this game. You've got no Michael Porter Jr. in this game. So a bunch of guys are just going to have to step up, and I see Aaron Gordon really filling that role. He's $5,200 tonight. We have, the smallest of all small samples of him playing without those 2 guys so far this season. He's only actually had 20 possessions with Jokic and Porter off the court in 2021-22, but he does have a 35% usage rate in that small sample, and I think that's pretty indicative of what's going to happen tonight. We saw this version of Aaron Gordon back in his Orlando days. He can play point forward. He can dish out 10 assists. He is someone who knows how to pass the basketball, and I think if Michael Malone is looking to kind of fill that Nikola Jokic void, I know you can't really do that, but his best option is probably Aaron Gordon because he can at least sort of pass in a similar sense, and you can run your offense out of Aaron Gordon in the post. So I think Gordon's going to have a pretty big performance at $5,200.
All right, Gary, and let's talk guards. 6 guys that will cost you over 10K. Are you going with one of them?
Yes, right at that line of demarcation, actually. LaMelo Ball, he's 10K. I just have to have someone from this game. You have to have exposure. This is the highest total on the slate by a wide margin, which is saying something because, again, we've got 13 games to choose from. And the reason for that is Charlotte and Memphis rank last and second to last in defensive rating in the NBA so far this season. There won't be anyone playing defense in this game. They might just take a break while they're playing defense so they can be better at playing offense next possession because they know this game is going to be incredibly high scoring. Ball has put up some really big fantasy performances as of late. He's averaging 51 DraftKings points across his last 6 games. I just think this is a smash spot for him. I don't mind John Morant on the other side either. I just think you have to get someone in this game.
Yeah, Nick, what do you think? What's your play at guard?
I agree with Garion sticking in that game versus going with maybe Steph or Russ, who are both a little bit higher priced. And as much as they have favorable matchups tonight, whether Steph going against Minnesota and Russ not having LeBron in his game. But I still looked at that and I think I can go a little bit cheaper and still get a really good player. And again, talking about the high-paced game with Sacramento and San Antonio, I'm going to go with DeJounte Murray at 9.7K because when I look at the Kings, they're 4th worst in points per game against point guards this season. And then one of the bigger ones for me was they're the worst in rebounds per game against point guards this season. And for DeJounte Murray, that's going to play big because he's averaging 8.1 on the year. So while I do like the LaMelo pick a lot, and I'm never going to knock anybody going with Ja, I think DeJounte is my favorite at guard tonight.
And now I need to know what the best value play on the board is, Nick.
So I'm going to bring it back full circle. Of course, the Cavs game, you saw what happened last time out with Ricky Rubio, of course, had a big game. And I understand people are going to want to chase him, making him a high value play tonight, a popular value play tonight. I still think he's worthwhile because the Wizards have given up a lot of points per game to opposing point guards. And I understand that that opposing point guards haven't done overall well from a fantasy perspective. But Rubio has a diverse game. Of course, assists and everything. He's going to be dishing those out. And he has 2 big guys that he should be feeding all night. Darius Garland is another one, too, I like in that game if you want someone who's been a little more consistent at a slightly more expensive price, but that's what you pay for with consistency. I still think he's a good play as well. And then Garion talked about the Memphis-Charlotte game a lot. I think another way you can get exposure in that game, too, is Desmond Bane at 5K, I know he's had some ups and downs, but I generally am going to back him.
Garion, best value on the board. What do you got?
Yeah, I would endorse all the guys Nick was talking about. I would also say to go back to that Nuggets-Pacers game. Again, you just got a lot of minutes in the front court that someone has to fill. So Aaron Gordon's going to play his normal allotment, maybe pick up a couple extra minutes, and he's only 5'2". But you've got the Greens, JaMychal and Jeff. JaMychal is 3'2", Jeff is 3'4". I think there's a chance JaMychal starts this game at center for the Nuggets, so he's probably going to be in double-double territory, especially if he plays over 30 minutes, which he'll probably have to. But I would say Jeff Green is maybe a little bit more interesting at 3-4 just because he probably has a higher ceiling. I think we've seen Jeff Green be one of those guys who is willing to step into an offensive void and take some shots. He is not afraid to put up a 25-30% usage rate off the bench if needed. So I think both those guys are very viable value plays on the slate.
All right, before we let you go, let's get your favorite sportsbook play of the night in the NBA. Garion, what you going with?
Going to go right back to Pacers-Nuggets. I don't know how the Pacers are only favored by 3 points in this game. I know the game's in Denver, and the Nuggets historically have some pretty insane numbers when they're playing at the Pepsi Center, but when you look at the on-off splits for Nikola Jokic this season, it is bad. When he is on the court, the Nuggets are outscoring their opponents by about 15 points per 100 possessions. When he is off the court, they are getting outscored by 17 points per 100 possessions. They would actually have the worst offensive rating in basketball and the worst defensive rating in basketball if you prorated their numbers without Nikola Jokic on the court this season. They are terrible when Jokic is not playing. And the Pacers are getting healthy. Malcolm Brogdon is questionable for this game, but he said yesterday that he would be playing in this contest. So I think the Pacers, with all their offensive weapons at their disposal, are going to be able to just take advantage of a very easy spot tonight against the Nuggets.
All right, Nick, what do you think? What's your favorite sportsbook play of the night?
I think Gary makes a lot of great points for the Pacers game. I had a couple props that I really like for this one. I talked about DeJounte Murray earlier. I like him to combine for over 25.5 points and rebounds. And then the big one for me, though, tonight is Joe Harris, over 2.5 three-pointers made. And that's at pretty much even money going up against the Magic tonight. And look, I mean, with him, he's 7 of 11 going on the over this season, and in 3 of those 4 times where he's gone under the mark, he's played sub 30 minutes. I know this is the biggest spread of the night, so you can think blowout, maybe he doesn't necessarily play as much, but it hasn't necessarily been the case the entire season. I mean, one of those games where he was sub 30 minutes, it wasn't the Nets ended up losing still. So this is a guy who's averaging almost 3 points made per game this season, and he's shooting 41% from 3. So I'm going to go with Joe Harris over 2.5 3-pointers tonight.